there's Langley Station. He's coming into Langley.
Welcome to a four-part series, The Rail Choice, Community Transit South of the Fraser. And we're going to be talking to a number of people who are very much involved in this, including Rick Green, former mayor of the Township of Langley, former director of Metro Vancouver, former alderman for the city of Delta, more importantly, former member of the TransLink Mayor's Council and president of the South Fraser Community Rail Society. Rick, thank you for joining us. Let's get right into the history of where this all started with the interurban.
Well, it's really, really interesting. If anybody's a history buff of the Lower Mainland, back in 1910, they created this interurban corridor that went out to Chilliwack, roughly 99 kilometers, and it was all developed to open up the Fraser Valley. It did all of the logging, cleared the land that we're all now using as agricultural land and what have you, and our urban environments. But it was something that was created. It cost $3 million in the day.
Which was a lot of money back then.
It was huge,
yeah.
and 99 kilometers in length. If you take a look at it, was used for passenger service and freight service. Passengers in 1910 paid $3 for a trip between the Patella Bridge and the city of Chilliwack. In 1950, when it was decommissioned, they were paying $3.85 for a trip between the 2 points. So it was really significant. But it was, again, the corridor was decommissioned for passenger use in 1950, but it was continued to use for freight service. It's an operating freight line today, but it's what we call sort of a small freight system. There's only 1 or 2 trains using it a day. But it is a very, very valuable and priceless opportunity. The interurban corridor, if people look at it, throughout North America, there are hundreds of them. And what we've learned in developing this program and this proposal is that virtually everywhere else in North America, these passenger corridors, these interurban corridors, were decommissioned in and around 1950. Why? Because of the advent of the superhighway, the automobile industry, the rubber tires, and everything that went into the auto industry. They basically sold off these corridors because they didn't want the competition with the automobile. They didn't want to see these rail corridors come back into focus. So that's really what happened. The interesting part in our case is the interurban corridor in the Lower Mainland was probably one of the very few, if not the only, corridor that was saved and protected for passenger use, and that took quite a vision.
And the corridor, not only the rail corridor, but also Highway 1 going through territory of someone who is very well known in British Columbia politics, former mayor of Surrey. He's also the former premier of the province of British Columbia. And some thoughts from Bill Vander Zalm. Bill, why would you want to come out of retirement and get involved with South Fraser Community Rail Society?
I'm not retired. I don't intend to go there for a while yet. I can go back to my shrubs after I'm finished here. So nothing's changed much, but I do enjoy doing this because it's an extremely important cause. We need to make sure that this gets out to all the people so they can actually have a say in what's about to happen.
Was this entire process starting back when you were mayor of Surrey or when you became the premier of the province?
Actually, I became very interested already when I was a youth, way back in the late 40s after we came from Holland. We lived along the track in Bradner. We lived right on the track. We were next to Lombard Station, which had initially been built on our property. So it goes back a way. I can think of this all the way back to the 40s. But since then, of course, I've been involved with transit. especially when I became the Minister of Municipal Affairs back in the early 80s. I was involved with transit. I approved or initiated the SkyTrain for Vancouver. But here is an important project that I became involved with when Rick approached me, told me what was happening and what we were about to do and how hard the group was working. I wanted to be a part of it.
And this is an interesting point there, where you were involved with SkyTrain right from the get-go, but here we are saying that, okay, SkyTrain is great, but here we have this opportunity to resurrect or bring back, if you will, the interurban. Is this too much of a challenge, or do you think this is a realistic resurrection, if you will, of the rail line?
It's realistic, and I think the people will come to see that very quickly. SkyTrain for the proposed stretch in Surrey, going right through the Green Timbers, is not realistic. They're talking about a massive type of concrete structure that works fine in Vancouver, where you're limited for space and where it is you have to go. Here, that's not the case. In Surrey, it won't work. It's the wrong thing, and what we're proposing will serve not only the valley more effectively and more efficiently, but also Surrey.
There's been a lot of conversation about not only moving people back and forth, but everything from connecting universities in Surrey, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack, and also even agritourism. I assume that you were taking a look at all of that when you really got heavily involved in this.
Well, of course, what I looked at mostly was the fact that I recognized the tram used to travel the track way back in the 40s and even into the 50s, and it served the purpose then. Now it can serve the purpose even better because there are far more people in the valley. There will be more people moving there. We need spaces for affordable housing. There are industrial parks. There's the airport. It just makes great sense to use the track. Not only that, we're saving mega millions of dollars doing it, as opposed to a 7-kilometer stretch of SkyTrain through a part of Green Timbers and into Fleetwood. This makes imminent sense.
Mr. Vander Zalm, are you concerned about any future political stumbling blocks? Because there seems to be, you're bumping up against SkyTrain proponents. Is there any way to change minds?
I think so. I think the people have to have a say, and which is why we're doing this. We're reaching out to the people. Eventually, if the people get out, there's enough voice coming back from people in the valley particularly, I think the politicians will have to listen. What they're proposing now doesn't make sense. It's a waste of money. Enormous amount of money will be wasted. So I think once the people realize this, we're okay.
And the fire in your eyes has not gone out. This is an issue you're going to be with through the long haul, I see.
I'm going to be with it till the very end for sure. I want to see it built. Now it'll take a while, but you know what? It won't take that long. If we do not extend or use the existing rail in the valley, then the valley, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Langley, they'll be waiting for many, many years. It may be 25, 30, 40 years before anyone even looks at it. So we gotta make this work, regardless.
Bill Vander Zalm, former Premier of the province of British Columbia and former Mayor of Surrey, but more importantly, very involved with South Fraser Community Rail Society. Back to Rick Green, there is part of this history that has me intrigued, and that is this master agreement where CP and BC Hydro are all partly players in this?
Yeah, Don, we found out early in 2009 about this master agreement through a meeting that I had. And I was just interested in the activity on the freight line that was going through the Langleys. We had about 15 trains a day that are going through the Langleys, and what effect we could have in terms of environmental whistle sensation, coal dust, and what have you. So through the course of that, I learned that there was something called the master agreement. asking, interestingly enough, I'm asking, well, where's the master agreement? Well, nobody could find the master agreement. This was back in 2005 when a study was done by our corporate lawyers of the day. So CP Rail wouldn't provide a copy. BC Hydro didn't even know it existed, if you can believe that. So through some intriguing connections that I had, I was able to get a copy of the master agreement the next day. What we found out in the master agreement, it was very intriguing. We've sent it out. We've had 4 legal opinions done on it, and it says what we think it says. Number one, it's a 21-and-a-half-year agreement, a 21-year agreement, pardon me. It also states that passenger and freight service shall be shared equally on this line. Should, because of the volume of traffic, it be required that they double track. Double tracking will be done at CP Rail's expense. So some very, very specific obligations as part of the sale of the freight rights by the BC government. And thanks to the vision of the Bill Vander Zalm government of the day, we have this available to us. We were able to, and it just so happens, we found out about this master agreement about 5 months before it was due to expire forever. Through a campaign that we launched with all the municipalities south of the Fraser, we were able to get BC Hydro to renew that agreement. So it's a renewable 21-year agreement at either party's option, and including the renewal clause. So it will be ongoing as long as it's renewed.
Something you were telling me off air about CP, that you were trying to get information, additional information, and you ran into an interesting stumbling block.
Well, it's interesting. People wonder, well, what was CP's reaction? Well, CP have been silent in a lot of respects, but we decided that we would file a Freedom of Information request to the Township of Langley for a copy of the master agreement to see what we would get. Well, the Township of Langley sent it off to BC Hydro, who then sent it off to CP Rail to get a permission to release the master agreement. We received a copy of the master agreement, all right. But interestingly enough, there was a redaction, a significant redaction in the master agreement that we got from CP Rail, all pertaining to the double tracking. So here you have a clause that they agreed to. They paid for the freight rights, and quite frankly, they got a pretty good deal when you look at it in today's dollars for the rights to run freight traffic on that corridor. So it is interesting that CP they're staying somewhat silent, but we have legal opinions from about 4 different parties. We also have the former Premier, as you have heard, Premier Vander Zalm, and it was their vision that protected passenger rights on this corridor for, again, part of the 21-year agreement.
We've covered a lot of territory in this first episode, the history of commuter rail, as well as this master agreement and CP, and of course the involvement of Bill Vander Zalm. Coming up in the next segment, critical mass, connecting the people, connecting the dots. And again, a big thank you to Rick Green. You're watching The Rail Choice, Community Transit, south of the Fraser on chillTV.